My stepdad sold my mother's house 3 days after her funeral. I found out when I got back from deployment 6 months later, and the new owners were living in it. My mother had died giving me a blood transfusion that saved my life after I was injured in combat. I came home on leave, expecting to walk into the house I grew up in. The house my mother had left to me in her will. The house she'd specifically told me to come home to. Instead, there was a minivan in the driveway that I didn't recognize, and a different name on the mailbox. My name is Daniel Cooper. I'm 28 years old. I've been in the Marines for 6 years. Infantry. I was on my second deployment when I was hit by shrapnel on my leg during a firefight. Lost enough blood that I needed emergency transfusions. My mother flew to Germany to the military hospital. She was the only family member allowed to visit because of my critical condition. She donated blood directly for my transfusions because we had the same rare blood type. The donation weakened her immune system. She caught an infection at the hospital. It spread to her heart. She died 2 weeks after saving my life. She was 53 years old. I was still in the ICU when it happened. Still recovering. I couldn't go to her funeral, couldn't say goodbye. The last thing she said to me was, "Come home to our house when you're better. I'll be waiting." My stepdad Richard promised he'd take care of everything. He'd been married to my mom for 8 years. He seemed devastated at her bedside. I trusted him completely. That trust cost me everything. I knocked on the door of my mother's house. A woman in her 30s answered, holding a baby. "Can I help you?" "I'm sorry, I think there's been a mistake. This is my mother's house." She looked confused. "We bought this house 6 months ago, from Richard Cooper." My stomach dropped. "Richard sold you this house?" "Yes. Is something wrong?" I pulled out my phone and showed her my mother's will. The one the hospital social worker had helped her draft while I was in surgery. The one that specifically left the house to me. This house was left to me. Richard had no right to sell it. Her face went white. "Oh my God, have a deed. We have title insurance. We paid $320,000. I felt the room spin. "I need to make some calls." I drove straight to Richard's new apartment. He'd moved across town into a luxury complex overlooking the river. 23rd floor. Brand new construction. He answered the door in expensive loungewear. A golf club in his hand. From the living room putting green I could see behind him. "Daniel, you're back. You look good. The leg healed up nicely. You sold my mother's house." His smile disappeared. "Come inside. Let's talk about this." "You sold the house she left to me in her will." The will hadn't cleared probate yet. Technically, I was still the legal owner. I had to make some difficult financial decisions. She died saving my life, and you sold our house 3 days later? I had crushing medical debt from her hospital stay. Her funeral costs. I had to liquidate assets quickly. "So you just sold it? Without telling me? While I was still in the hospital?" "You were in Germany in the ICU. I couldn't reach you. I made the decision I had to make. That house was supposed to be my home when I got back. She told me to come home to it." He sighed like I was being unreasonable. "Daniel, I understand you're emotional about this, but business is business. The house is sold. The buyers have a legal deed. There's nothing anyone can do now." "Where's the money from the sale?" He hesitated. "I used it to cover expenses." $320,000 in expenses? Your mother's medical bills were over $100,000. Her funeral cost $30,000. And I had some personal financial obligations that needed immediate attention. "What personal financial obligations?" He gestured around the luxury apartment. "I needed somewhere to live after everything I went through. I couldn't stay in that house. Too many memories." I looked past him. 70-inch TV on the wall, leather furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows with a river view. A brand new set of Callaway golf clubs in the corner. "You sold my mother's house and bought yourself a luxury apartment." I needed a fresh start after the trauma of losing Linda and nearly losing you. Something snapped inside me. The trauma of nearly losing me? I'm the one who got blown up. She's the one who died saving me. You're the one who sold our house to buy a fucking putting green. Watch your tone. I was her husband. I had legal rights. You were her husband for 8 years. That was my home for 28 years. That was where she wanted me to come back to after she died, saving my life. Then maybe she should have planned better. Now get out of my apartment before I call security. I left before I did something I'd regret. I went straight to a lawyer, showed him everything. My mother's will, the deed, the sale records. Her death certificate showed she died from an infection contracted while donating blood for me. He reviewed it all carefully. Your mother's will is valid and clear, but your stepfather is technically correct about one thing. He was on the deed as a joint owner with rights of survivorship. When she died, the house automatically became his property. The will doesn't override that. So I have no claim? Not to the house, but you might have a claim to the proceeds if we can prove he violated his duty as executor of her estate or acted in bad faith. Did she have other assets? She had a life insurance policy, $100,000. It was specifically designated for me in case anything happened to her. Did you receive it? No. He made a note. We need to find out if he claimed that as a beneficiary spouse. I filed a formal complaint with the probate court, requested a full accounting of all my mother's assets. It took 3 weeks to get the records. Richard had claimed the life insurance as the surviving dollars. He'd also emptied my mother's savings account the day after her funeral, another $18,000. He'd taken everything, every single thing my mother had left for me. I called my mother's sister, my Aunt Patricia. She'd been with my mother when she died. Danny, sweetheart, how are you? How's the leg? Aunt Patricia, did you know Richard sold Mom's house? Long silence. What? He sold it 3 days after her funeral, while I was still in the ICU in Germany. That can't be right. Your mother made me promise. She grabbed my hand before she died and said, make sure Danny gets the house. Make sure Richard doesn't touch it. My throat closed. She said that? Those were her last words to me. She was terrified Richard would do something like this. She tried to change the deed, but she was too weak. She couldn't get to the bank. Did she say why she didn't trust him? Patricia's voice dropped. She found out he'd been gambling. He'd run up $70,000 in debt. She'd been paying it off secretly for months. She was terrified he'd use her death to cash in. He took the life insurance too, and her savings. Oh my God, Danny. I need you to tell everyone in the family what Mom said to you. Her last words. Can you do that? Of course. Why? Because I'm going to make sure everyone knows what he did. I called every single person in my family, my mother's brothers, her cousins, her childhood friends, everyone who'd been at the funeral. And I invited them all to Sunday dinner at my Aunt Patricia's house. Told them it was a memorial gathering now that I was finally home, Richard included. It would mean a lot to see everyone, I told him on the phone. To honor Mom properly now that I'm stationary again. He agreed to come. Sunday arrived. 23 family members showed up. My uncles, my mother's 3 brothers, her cousins, her best friends from college, people who'd known my mother for decades. Richard walked in with a bottle of expensive wine and that same fake smile. Richard, so glad you could make it, Aunt Patricia said. Her voice was ice. We all sat down. Everyone kept glancing at me, at my leg brace, at Richard. My Uncle Kevin started. Danny, tell us about the injury. Your mom said you were a hero. I'm not a hero. I just did my job, got unlucky with some shrapnel. Your mother didn't see it as unlucky. She saw it as her chance to save your life. Richard shifted in his seat. I continued. She flew all the way to Germany, donated blood for my transfusions. We have the same rare blood type, AB negative. Only 1% of people have it. My mother's best friend, Carol, spoke up. She was so proud she could do that for you. She called me from the hospital, said I'm giving Danny my blood. I'm keeping him alive. The donation weakened her immune system, I said quietly. She caught an infection. It spread fast. The room went silent. She died 2 weeks after donating. I was still in the ICU. I couldn't go to her funeral. Carol was crying now. She made me promise something before she went to Germany. She said, if anything happens to me, make sure Danny gets the house. Don't let Richard touch it. Richard's face went white. Aunt Patricia spoke up. She said the same thing to me. Her last words. She grabbed my hand and said, make sure Danny gets the house. Make sure Richard doesn't touch it. Everyone turned to look at Richard. She was worried about you, Richard, Patricia continued. She knew about the gambling. My Uncle David stood up. What gambling? Richard had $70,000 in gambling debt. Linda had been paying it off in secret for months. The room erupted. You were gambling while she was dying? Richard tried to speak. That was before. I cut him off. Richard sold Mom's house 3 days after her funeral, while I was still in the ICU in Germany. Complete silence. He sold it for $320,000, without telling me. The house Mom specifically left to me in her will. The house she begged everyone to make sure I got. My Uncle Kevin's face turned red. You sold Linda's house? While Danny was in the hospital? I had medical bills. I had funeral costs. Medical bills from her saving Danny's life. Carol shouted. I pulled out my phone. Want to know what else Richard did? I showed them all a photo. Richard at the Bellagio in Vegas, standing at a craps table, holding chips, smiling wide. The date stamp, 5 weeks after my mother's funeral. He took the money from Mom's house and went to Vegas. The room exploded. People were shouting. My uncle stood up. Richard tried to defend himself. I needed to decompress after everything I'd been through. Everything you'd been through? My voice was shaking. I got blown up. My mother died. You went to Vegas. I was grieving. I stood up, grabbed my crutch, looked around the room at everyone. Richard also claimed Mom's $100,000 life insurance policy and emptied her savings account the day after her funeral. In total, he took $438,000 that my mother wanted me to have. Aunt Patricia gasped. She wanted that money to go to Danny, she told me. She said, this is for his future, for when he comes home. Richard was surrounded now. 23 people stared at him with pure hatred. My Uncle David stepped forward. He was 6'3", former college linebacker. Where's the money now, Richard? I spent it. On what? Medical bills, funeral costs, living expenses. I pulled up my bank records on my phone. Actually, I got copies of all the bills. Medical debt from Mom's treatment, $83,000. Her funeral, $18,000. That's $101,000 total. You took $438,000. Where's the other $337,000? He didn't answer. My Uncle Kevin pulled out his phone, started scrolling. I'm looking at your Facebook, Richard. Here's you at a Michelin-starred restaurant. 3 weeks after Linda died. Here's you in a new Mercedes. 4 weeks after. Here's you on a boat in Miami. 6 weeks after. Carol stood up. You spent Linda's money living like a king while her son was recovering from nearly dying? Richard grabbed his coat. I don't have to listen to this. But my Uncle David blocked the door. Actually, you do. Sit down. Richard sat. I continued. I filed a complaint with the probate court. They're investigating whether you violated your fiduciary duty as executor of Mom's estate, whether you committed fraud. Everything I did was legal. Legal and right aren't the same thing, Aunt Patricia said quietly. Linda died saving her son's life, and you robbed him blind before he could even bury her. My mother's cousin Sarah spoke up. Linda told me something 3 months before she went to Germany. She said, if anything happens to me, watch Richard. Don't let him hurt Danny. She knew you'd do this. Richard's face was red. You people don't understand what I sacrificed taking care of her. I stepped forward. What do you sacrifice? She died for me. She flew across the world to give me her blood. That blood killed her, and you stole everything she left behind. Sue me then. I will. He stood up and pushed past my uncle. ran out the door. The room sat in stunned silence. Then Carol grabbed my hand. "Danny, I need to tell you something. Linda came to me 5 days before she flew to Germany. She opened a safety deposit box at First National Bank. She put money in it. Money Richard didn't know about. She gave me the key and made me promise to give it to you when you came home." My heart stopped. "What?" She said, "If anything happens to me, Danny gets this. Richard can't ever know about it." 2 days later, Carol took me to the bank, gave me the key to box 447. Inside was $68,000 in cash and a letter. "Danny, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm so sorry I can't be there when you come home. I'm so sorry about everything that's happened. Richard has a sickness, a gambling problem I couldn't fix. I tried for years, but I failed. I know he'll take everything after I'm gone. I know he'll sell the house. I know he'll spend it all. So I hid this money where he'll never find it. This is for your future, for your home, for your life. Don't let him take anything else from you. I love you more than anything in this world. I died happy knowing I saved your life. That blood was the best thing I ever gave anyone. Come home safe, sweetheart. Build a beautiful life. You deserve everything. I'm so proud of you. Love, Mom." I broke down in the bank parking lot, sat in my car, crying for an hour. I hired a forensic accountant, had them trace every dollar Richard had taken. $438,000. He'd blown through almost all of it in 6 months. Gambling, luxury apartment, a new car, trips to Vegas and Miami, expensive dinners every single night. My lawyer filed a lawsuit, fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, conversion of assets, elder abuse for exploiting my mother while she was dying. Richard's lawyer tried to dismiss it, said everything was technically legal, but we had something they didn't expect. A deposition from the hospital social worker in Germany, the one who'd helped my mother draft her will. Linda was terrified, the social worker testified. She said her husband was a gambler, that he'd try to take everything. She begged me to help her protect her son. She was crying. She said, "He's gonna sell our house. I know he will. How do I stop him?" The social worker had documented everything. Had my mother sign affidavits about Richard's gambling, about her fears, about her explicit intentions for her assets. The judge allowed the case to proceed. We settled 8 months later. Richard agreed to pay me $350,000 in restitution. Every penny he had left, plus payment plans for the rest. It destroyed him financially. He had to sell the luxury apartment, sell the Mercedes, move into a studio apartment in the worst part of town. He filed for bankruptcy, but the judgment followed him. I took the settlement money and the $68,000 my mother had hidden, bought a house near the base, 3 bedrooms, small yard, nothing fancy. I framed my mother's letter and hung it in the hallway, right next to her photo from when she visited me in Germany. She's smiling in the hospital room, exhausted but happy. She'd just donated blood to save my life. She died 8 days after that photo was taken. Last month, I ran into Richard at a VA hospital. He was there for something. He looked terrible, aged 20 years, thin, gray. He saw me and looked away. Started walking faster. I didn't say anything. Just let him go. My Aunt Patricia asked me once if I felt guilty for destroying him financially. I told her the truth. He sold the house of a woman who died saving her son's life. He spent her money on gambling and luxury while her son was recovering from combat injuries. He stole from a Gold Star family. I don't feel guilty. I feel like justice was served. She hugged me and said Mom would be proud. I think she's right. My mother flew to Germany and gave me her blood. That blood killed her, but it kept me alive. The least I could do was make sure her sacrifice meant something. Richard tried to take everything she left behind. I made sure he paid for it. Not because I'm cruel, but because some things are sacred. And a mother's dying wish to protect her son is one of them.